like one of those, but I just like that he wrote this himself and left it up.
All right, Bava Batra Yud Zayin Amud Aleph.
Keith is listening to us.
Okay. So with this, we're finishing the first parak of Bava Batra. Yeah, it's been a fun parak. Lots of agarata, wild journey. And the parak ends off. We'll learn just kind of the last some things from towards the end of the parak. And basically, what we'll be discussing is this famous idea that Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam actually they die al pi Hashem. That they die in a special way. The Midrash talks about how they didn't die a normal death. They died from a kiss from Hashem. So, leaving aside what that exactly means and how we're meant to understand that, but there's something special about their deaths. So we'll see how various Gemaras. Moshe, Miriam, and Aaron. So
you grew up learning about Aaron and Miriam?
Aaron, Ken, Miriam.
So Gemara says why we don't talk about Miriam. So.
Right, we'll see why we don't talk. We'll see why Miriam is a bit. It's potentially a bit different. But basically, we'll look at kind of three. Usually, we have like one central Gemara, and then we go build and develop an idea on it. Here, we have kind of three back to back, and spend like maybe 10 minutes on each one of them. Just kind of develop some nice ideas. Okay, so the Gemara says as follows: Tanu Rabbanan, it was taught. Shisha lo shalat behen malach hamavet ve'elu hen Avraham, Yitzchak, veYaakov, Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam. So there were 6 where the angel of death had no dominion over them. Okay, the Avot, and then Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam. How do I know this? Avraham, Yitzchak, veYaakov dichtiv behu bakol mikol kol. Okay, we did this last week in a kind of in the previous section of the Gemara. By Avraham it says bakol, by Yitzchak it says mikol, and by Yaakov it says kol. That's what we say in benching. It's a bracha for each of the Avot. So they were blessed with everything. What does that mean? That they were blessed to not have the Malach HaMavet have control over them. Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam, dichtiv bu al pi Hashem. And Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam, they all died al pi Hashem. So the fact they died al pi Hashem means that Hashem is the one who took their lives and not the angel of death. The Gemara asks, just like, Mr. Meyerfeld, right? Rabbi Mr. Meyerfeld, said, V'ha Miriam luktiv ba al pi Hashem. But it doesn't say al pi Hashem with Miriam. It says she died. That's it. So what are you telling me it says al pi Hashem? Miriam nami b'neshika meta. So first of all, there's a chidush that when it says al pi Hashem, that doesn't mean by the command of Hashem, but it means literally al pi Hashem. They died with the mouth of Hashem. Whatever that means. So he understands that to mean b'neshika, a divine kiss. And he says Miriam also died this way. De'at yasham sham Moshe. How do I know this? It's Gzera Shava. The fact that Moshe died al pi Hashem, and it says Sham by Moshe, so I know the Sham by Miriam also means al pi Hashem. But then why not just say al pi Hashem by Miriam? Because it would be inappropriate to describe HaKadosh Baruch Hu taking Miriam's life through a kiss. So it only alludes to it through a Gzera Shava. Okay?
A lot of suspicious things.
Okay. Tanu Rabbanan. The next brayta. Shiva lo shalat bahen rima v'tole'ah. There were 7 who, when they died, worms and rot and maggots and worms did not, devour their bodies. Ve'elu hen Avraham, Yitzchak, veYaakov, Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam, uVinyamin ben Yaakov. So it adds a 7th person to the list. Binyamin.
Very surprising one.
Why not Yosef?
You would think maybe Yosef, maybe Elisha, maybe
Yosef was in the
You guys just asked the same question. Very good.
What?
Joseph was in the water for years.
Doesn't matter, still.
Also, we know that it doesn't specifically mention his bones.
No, that was Yaakov.
It says, but yeah.
Yosef had in the yeah. Moshe אמר זה, ואז העצמות שלו עלו, yeah.
It doesn't say that they don't have bones. It says that their body doesn't decompose. So I guess what you're saying is since it says they had bones, it means you can't say about Yosef his body must. No,
I'm saying usually you say it about all the tzaddikim, so it's very surprising.
Right. Okay. Good. We'll get to that. We'll get to that. Very good. Good question. Great question. Very good question. Okay. Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov dichtiv bu bakol mikol kol. Okay. So same idea. Moshe ve'Aaron and Miriam dichtiv bu al pi Hashem. Binyamin ben Yaakov dichtiv uLeVinyamin amar yedid Hashem yishkon levet hachalav. This is the bracha that Binyamin gets, that he will dwell securely. It's meant to be an allusion to the fact that the actual person, Binyamin's body, didn't decompose. Right, my flesh shall dwell securely. So here it means literally, my flesh will dwell securely; it will not decompose. V'idach. So how does the one who says David is not included in the list explains pasuk? That he's not stating a fact that his flesh will not decompose when he dies. He's asking for mercy over his. He's saying like as a prayer.
He wrote it, so it's a bit hard to
to say that it's a nevuah for his own death.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, fair enough.
Didn't we talk about this already?
What?
Already talked about it, about Moshe. Yeah?
Right, about writing Nevuah before finishing the Torah.
That's true. That Moshe wrote the end with his tears. Yeah, we discussed that a few weeks ago. Nachon. Okay, so these are the Gemaras. Okay, so like I said, I want to kind of look at different Gemaras and just kind of like elucidate some aspects of these sugyas. Okay, if we start with Tosfot at the beginning. So he says, okay, so actually Tosfot is referencing the Breita before this, which I didn't bring, but the concept is the same. That the Breita right before this, which I didn't bring here by accident, it says 3 didn't have the Yetzer Hara rule over them, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Okay? Tosfot asks, what does it mean that you don't have the Yetzer Hara rule over you? In the Faresh, Shelo Shalat Klal, it can't mean that the Yetzer Hara did not rule over them at all. Why can't it mean that the Yetzer Hara did not rule over them? You can't say that Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov had no Yetzer Hara, because then how did they receive reward for the tests that they endured? Okay?
It doesn't say
it. Well, no, here. We'll see.
It doesn't say though.
What?
It says Malachama, but
I know, I didn't bring the sentence before by accident. The sentence before says they also didn't have the Yetzer Hara. Okay? So Tosfot asks, how could that be? Because then how can they get reward? Ela keda'amar, so Tosfot gives the following answer. Ma'ay dichtiv ragil chasida vishmor, kevan she'avar adam rov shnotav velo chata, shuv eino choteh. So there's this idea in Yuma that if a person manages to live a life free of sin for most of their life, then at the end of their life, they're kind of, grandfathered in. They're going to be okay. They won't sin at the end of their lives either. So hachinami, kevan shera'a kadosh baruch hu shayu dochakin atzman kol kach להתרחק מן העבירה, סיים הקדוש ברוך הוא מכאן ואילך, שלא שלט בהן יצר הרע. That because Hashem saw that Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov worked so hard their entire lives to battle against the Yetzer Hara and conquer it, so that at the end of their lives, he just took the Yetzer Hara away and it didn't have any dominion over them. So according to Tosfot, when it says there were 3 who didn't have Yetzer Hara, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, it means at the end of their lives, they actually didn't have any Yetzer Hara at all. The Avad Eitan, which I didn't bring here, but is one of the Perushim on Yaakov, he doesn't like that idea at all. He says, the Avad Eitan, it's a Perush on the Yaakov. And he goes on a whole long thing, which is why I didn't bring it, but he basically argues a different idea, where he says that the chiluk to make here is that Shelo Shalat B'hen Yetzer Hara, in terms of sinning b'shogeg. That the Avot didn't have any, that Hashem helped them not to have any inclination to sin accidentally, right? Where they didn't know, but with sinning b'mezid, of course they had to have had that, because otherwise they can't receive a reward.
Doesn't B'shogeg always imply that it wasn't an inclination to sin in the first place?
Well, no, even b'shogeg, there's still some sense of accountability, it's just not full willfulness, right? Right. It's not that you're totally exempt. You did something wrong. You could have been more careful. So Yetzer Hara does have some role to play, but it's not like you did it on purpose. So that's how the Ahavat Eitan tries to explain this. Okay, but leave it at that, because this is kind of a bit of a difficult idea. Okay, I want to now talk about the idea of Al Pi Hashem and the divine kiss. Okay, so first of all, what does that mean? What does it mean for Hashem to kiss you and for your soul to leave? What does that mean? So the Gemara in Brachot explains as follows: Tani nami hachi, 903 minei mita nivru ba'olam, shneimar lamavet totzaot. Okay, so 903 different types of death exist in the world, because the pasuk says lamavet, when it comes to death, totzaot. Totzaot begematria hachiyavu. The word totzaot has a gematria of 903. So I know there's 903 different ways for death to visit the world. Kashe shebechulam askera. Okay, the harshest way to die is askara, which is croup, I think. And the COVID. Easiest or sorry?
Cry COVID.
Oh, COVID. And the easiest way to die is through a kiss. So what does that mean? So askara adamya kechizra bigvava de amara de leachore nashra. So croup, this disease, what is it like? It's like if you have a sheep that has a full wool, and then you take a needle and you pull the wool back and you tear it out of the sheep. So it's a very painful, difficult process. So that's what croup is like. And some say that it's like if your esophagus is blocked with something, I don't remember exactly what that means. But it's something that's very painful. Very, very painful, very difficult. And nishika, what is nishika like? Damya kemishchal benita michelva, like pulling out a hair from milk. You have milk and you have some thin hair, you remove the hair, it's like smooth as removing a hair. So that's the Gemara's analogy for explaining the process of a divine kiss. Now, like on a Kabbalistic level, what does it mean that, the divine kiss, why is it like a seamless? Because the neshama is being reunited back with its source, right? It's like it's a painless exercise. It's going back to its like a natural habitat, as it were. Okay.
The ultimate consummation.
Is there anything about the milk? I mean,
Why milk?
Is there any other?
I don't know. That's a good question. Yeah. I assume there's some Kabbalistic explanation for it.
It's
But
easier to see in contrast, but it
Maybe.
depends how a person
It might also be thicker, and therefore, like it's easier to grab it. Like a water, it might move around more. Or
yeah, I actually thought to connect it because Moshe is the one who dies al pi Hashem, and the whole idea is like Eretz Avat Chalav Udvash, and he's not able to go into Eretz Yisrael. No, it's like I couldn't really like connect the dots. That's too much.
It's too.
Moshe also has other milk references. He didn't refuse to nurse from the Egyptians. He had to get his mother to nurse him.
Right.
The full circle there.
Okay. Good. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Doesn't say it in the Torah, though.
No.
So the
Neither
Miriam
does
just
this.
came and like, by the way, I know.
Neither did this.
Oh wow. Okay. Very good.
We have diagrams.
It's HaTorah Sheli. It's the kid. So it has a description of Moshe's death with the kiss. Yeah. Weird after Shkoyach.
Bring it
Okay.
back to the source.
Yeah, exactly. What is it reference here? It says Al Pi Dvarim Rabba. Okay, I don't think I quoted that here. Okay. All right. I want to describe now, or discuss now, a question that the Gemara doesn't ask, but the Mefarshim ask, which is, it says that Miriam didn't die Al Pi Hashem in the Psukim. But I know that she did really because it's Gzer Shava from Moshe, okay? Because it says Sham. And the Mefarshim ask, if you look chronologically, what's the order of the death of these three people? It's Miriam, and then Aaron, and then Moshe. And by Aaron it also says Sham. So if it says Al Pi Hashem and Sham by Aaron, why are you deriving it from Moshe Rabbeinu instead of from Aaron? That would make sense because it comes first in the Torah. Okay? So, right before that, actually, just quickly, in the Tanchumi Elamdeinu, it says, Be'oto rega yatzat nishmato b'neshika. This is talking about Moshe Rabbeinu. שנאמר וימות שם משה ולא נתעסקו בקבורתו לא יסוע ולא המלאכים אלא הקדוש ברוך הוא. שנאמר ויקבור אותו בגיא. That the Al Pi Hashem, again, there's something about it that's direct from Hashem. It's not through the Malach HaMavet. It's this kind of very intimate encounter that the Midrashim, like Dvarim Rabbah, they elaborate on it a lot. There's a whole story about how like Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't want to die, and he argues with the Malach HaMavet, and he argues with the Satan, and they go back and forth, and eventually Hashem is the one who comes in and takes his neshama. Okay?
you say that the Shenemar is about the Kvura, not about the Mita.
Vayamot Sham Moshe
Right?
is
and
him
then
dying.
the Shenemar, no Nataska B'Kvurato. Right? It's not. That's already after the death.
Okay. You're saying that. Okay,
The
that's
Raya is about.
was Hakadosh Baruch Hu.
Maybe. I mean, but it's a bit of a funny. It's a one step removed. It's like after the Mita. Maybe he died in after death, and then Hashem was buried him b'schut Moshe Rabbeinu's whatever. But
I see what you're saying. Okay, maybe I jumped the gun. In other words, it could be that the death of the Neshika is Al Pi Hashem, but the Kvur just for Moshe happened to have been separate.
no, the opposite. I'm saying that usually the Shenemar is proving the earlier point. The earlier point is that Hashem that he died through Hashem.
Right.
But the Raya seems to be that Hashem buried him.
No, there's two Shenemars here. One and two.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
But you're right that the first Shenemar is proving that he died through Al Pi Hashem, but it doesn't quote or Vayamot Sham Moshe Al Pi Hashem. I think it just doesn't continue the pasuk. But yes, I hear what you're saying. It does have. No, I think I drew that conclusion kind of without thinking through all the way that it could be that the kavura was not. You can die Al Pi Hashem without the kavura being Al Pi Hashem.
Right.
They don't have to be coupled like that. Right. And by Moshe, they happen to both have been done by Hashem. Okay, fair enough. That's a good point. Okay, the Gemara in Tani, and I realize I've been hogging this whole time. The Gemara in Tani on Daf Tera Amud Aleph says, Meitver, Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Shlosha Parnasim Tovim Amdu Yisrael, Eluhen, Moshe ve'Aaron and Miriam. There were three great sponsors of the Jewish people, Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam. Shlosha Matanot Tovot Nidnu Al Yadam. They gave three gifts, or three gifts were given on their behalf. Ve'eluhen, Be'er v'Anan Uman. Okay, this is a famous midrash. The Be'er b'schut Miriam, right? They had a well that always had water through the merit of Miriam. Amud Anam b'schut Aaron, V'man b'schut Moshe. And then when each of them died, one of the gifts left them, right? Meta Miriam nistaleka be'er, shne'emar, vatamot sham Miriam. Uchtiv batoi v'lo yamayim la'ida. How do we know that the be'er was because of Miriam? Because right after she dies, they don't have any water. Okay? V'chazra b'schut shne'en. But then the well comes back because of Aaron and Moshe, and it continues, talks about Aaron. When he died, the cloud left, and then it comes back from Moshe. And okay. So, the reason I brought this is because what we see from here is, if you remember, it says Atya Sham Shami Moshe, that the Gzera Shava for Miriam dying through a divine kiss was from the word Sham. But we see here a different source, or a different limud from the Sham. Okay, that Sham is used to teach me, it's used as the pasuk to draw a juxtaposition, a hekesh, to the fact that there was no water, and from that I learned that Miriam had, there was a well. Okay? Now you could say to me that's not really a problem because it's saying the pasuk Vatamot Sham Miriam is next to the pasuk about they didn't have any water, so that teaches me that there was a well on her behalf. It doesn't mean the word Sham itself is extraneous, that I've used it up for Gzera Shava. But the next source, I think, you do have to say that, and then that's kind of where the question gets raised. The Mishnah in Moed Katan is discussing the halachot of Chol HaMoed, and one of the things about Chol HaMoed is you're not supposed to eulogize or mourn in certain ways because it's a happy time. So the Mishnah talks about how they used to kind of leave biers or coffins in the road, and then people would come eulogize them in some kind of fat, whatever the custom was. So the Mishnah says, "Ein manichin et hamita barachov shelo dargir ta'asped." So this custom of leaving a coffin in the road for people to come and eulogize the body. You don't do that on Chol HaMoed because, again, you don't want to create too much sadness. V'lo shel nashim le'olam mipnei kavod. And if it's a woman who died, you never do that. Not just on Chol HaMoed, because it's not respectful for the woman's body to be there in the street for people to come eulogize it. Okay, that's what the Mishnah says. So then the Gemara says, V'lo shel nashim le'olam mipnei kavod. It asks the following. Amrei nahardeh, lo shanu el chaya. So in Nahardeh, they said that was only taught if she died in childbirth. And then Rashi, I think in the Mefarshim, they say it's because there might be blood and stuff in the body. It's very not appropriate to be doing that. Aval shar nashim manichin, but if it comes to women who didn't die in childbirth but just died normally, so it's not considered dishonorable to do this ceremony for them. Rabbi Elazar amar afilu shar nashim, but Rabbi Elazar disagrees with the Nahardeh, and he says no woman should be buried this way. Why not? Or should be eulogized this way. Why not? Tichtiv vatamot sham Miriam v'tikaver sham. Samuch lamita kvura. Okay, this kind of ties to what you were saying before, right? That the pasuk says Miriam died there and was buried there. That teaches me that I need to bury them right where they die. So that means I can't take a woman and from where she died and then go do this whole process of bringing her bier to the street and do this eulogy. It's not respectful. There's a limud from Miriam's death that it has to be Sham was where she died. Shamder was the kvura. I can't play with the body in that sense, right?
The argument of childbirth and maybe doesn't cover Kedusha even back then, that was kind of the body and all that, Tahara, how's...
Yeah, but I guess it just means people knew that she died in childbirth. There's something about that I don't know. It's, there was an association with it that wasn't appropriate. But the point for our purposes is that Rabbi Elazar is saying no woman should be, ever should be, have the bier brought into the street like that. And we learn it from Miriam because it says Sham, right? That where she died is where she was buried. So we'll just finish the Gemara. V'amar Rabbi Elazar, af Miriam b'neshika meta, af atya sham shami Moshe. Mipnei lo nemar ba'al pi Hashem, mipnei gnaya davar lo omro. So here we have the same teaching that we had in our Gemara, also in Moed Katan. And Amar Rabbi Ami, lama nismecha mitat Miriam l'parshat paraduma. So we saw before in Ta'anit that there was a hekesh of Miriam's death to what came after it, which is that they didn't have any water. And I learned from that there was a well. So now it's saying, why is Miriam's death placed, what comes before it is paraduma. So why is that? Lomar l'chama paraduma mechaperet af mitatan shel tzadikim mechaperet. Right. So just as the way to gain atonement is with paraduma or to purify, so too the death of a tzaddik purifies. That's what that Hekesh teaches me. And then a similar idea. Amar Rabbi Elazar, lama nismecha mitat Aharon levidei kuhuna. Aaron's death is placed next to the discussion of Bigdei Kuna. Bigdei Kuna mechaperin af mitatan shel tzadikim mechaperet. Okay. So here what I want to raise is the question. The Maharsha is going to deal with this now. Here we see something that could potentially be problematic, where Rabbi Elazar derives Vatamot Sham Miriam v'tikaver Sham, that the word Sham is used to teach me this halacha. It's not even like an agadic idea. It's a halacha, right? There's a halacha that when it comes to women, samuch lemita kfura, and you have to bury women. You can't bring their biers out into the street. You have to bury them where they died. So that's a halachic principle I learned from Sham. So how can I use Sham to then go and derive this idea of Sham Shami Moshe? Isn't that a little bit strange? So if we look in the Maharsha,
Two shams.
okay, and therefore,
So you could use one for each of them. There's Vatamat Sham, Miriam, and Vatikaver Sham. So Vatikaver Sham you could learn for the use for the Mishnah's learning.
but isn't the Sham for the halacha? I need the Sham twice to say. No, it's Samuch Lamita Kvura is because I say Sham. If I only had one Sham.
Maybe you can use it as he's learning the Tamad Sham Miriam, the Tikaver Sham, so he's saying Sham Sham Moshe, and then he's saying that because it makes sense what he said also. And that actually teaching you that you're not supposed to put the Nashnika, there's no cover in that.
Say it again. I have a question.
Saying, he says Sham Sham,
Yeah.
then you go to Moshe, and he's saying Miriam was also Al-Pi Hashem.
Right.
But he doesn't say it because it's nice to say it specifically, not just to Miriam, to any kind of woman. And then he's trying to take it also to say, you don't put women in the street.
Ah.
He's saying
Okay.
like Miriam wasn't בשביל לשמור על הכבוד שלה, so he didn't say על פי השם. So just like that, you don't put women.
Ah, yafe. I didn't read it that way. You're tying the two drashot together and saying shegnaya davar.
Rabbi Eliezer will say that when he's saying
We'll say
also
that.
על פי השם.
Okay, so you're saying gnaya davar in the sense that it's samuch
That
lemita
actually, that's how he learns.
Okay, that's
That
very
you
good.
don't put women outside.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, let's see what the Maharsha says. That's a good diuk. So
Nobody
Atya.
says it, so it doesn't make sense, I guess.
What?
Saying
No, he says
none of the Mefashim say it, so it means it's not correct.
No, it doesn't. First of all, no, it doesn't. It just means that they haven't learned you yet. That's all. Okay, so the Maharsha is this middle section, right, where it starts. The first line says, the second line says, Atya Sham. Okay, so he says, Katava Re'em Parshat Chukat, the Atya Sham, Sham mi Aharon, Ked'ita b'shili moed katan. Okay, so he quotes the Re'em, who's Perish on the Torah. He says that we derive it from Aharon, right, which is not what our Gemara said. Our Gemara said Moshe. And he says, "De'im loke," and if you don't derive that, treizin nesham b'Miriam namali ad kan l'shana. This is what Yoni, you were kind of saying. Why do I need vatamot sham Miriam v'tikaver sham twice, if not to teach me something? Hatema mima sheshina l'shon Gemara deka'amar hachav moed katan the sham sham Moshe. So the Maharsha, who lives 200 years after the Re'em, something like that, maybe more. So he says, I don't understand what the Re'em said here, that he switched the gears of the Gemara, which said Moshe, and he wrote Aharon. Velo amru me Aharon. The Gemara doesn't say from Aharon, it says from Moshe. Kedita b'shir d'moy katan. Dim lo kedredim l'sham d'Miriam namali eno. Deha Rabbi Elazar dehu gufa mara d'shmatet ka'amar hatam b'moy katan detrei zimne sham b'Miriam itztarich lismoch lemita kvura gabei nashim. So he says, Rabbi Elazar himself is the one who says, I need the word sham twice in order to teach me this halacha of samuch lemita kfura. So the Re'em's whole question that he adds of why do I need the word sham twice, clearly it's to teach me the Gzera Shava, doesn't make sense because Rabbi Elazar, in one sentence right after the other in our Gemara, he says first, the fact that it says sham twice teaches me samuch lemita kfura, and then right afterwards it says atya sham shami Moshe. That doesn't make sense. Like it's inherent. Yeah, how could Rabbi Elazar use the same idea of Sham being here twice to teach me both the halakha and then also the idea that Miriam died al pi Hashem? So he continues and says, ועל כורחך הנראה, אף על גב דשם גבי אהרון מוקדם בקרא. So even though when Aaron dies, it says he died Sham, the reason why the Gemara doesn't derive it from Aaron is the following. Lo nakat la misham, de lo hava gzera shava mufne afilu mitzad echad. So he says, the way I need to understand this is that I need the word sham in the gzera shava, if I'm understanding Marsha correctly, it needs to be like available for the gzera shava in one direction. I don't need it to be extraneous on both sides. I need it to be extraneous on one side. Okay? And then I can say that sham on the one side is teaching me from the sham, even if that other sham has a valid reason to be there. So he says, here in Rabbi Elazar, he has two teachings back to back. He says, first, Vatamot sham Miriam v'tikaver sham, I need both of those shams to teach me samuch lamita kvura. So then how can Rabbi Elazar then go and say, At yasham sham Moshe? It doesn't make any sense. Unless I say that the Gzera Shava of the Sham, it's okay that Miriam the Sham is teaching me something else and it has a purpose to teach me halakha, but I can still use that Sham which has its own purpose if the other side of the Gzera Shava is redundant. Then I can say, it says Sham there for a different reason, but here the Sham is redundant, so I'm using it to teach me this idea that there's this dying al pi Hashem. So by Miriam the Sham is not extraneous, by Moshe it's extraneous, but still that teaches me that Miriam is the one who died al pi Hashem, even though it doesn't say by her that explicitly. Okay? Why not? Shignaihu, because it would be inappropriate. So that's the Maharsha's kind of thesis. And that's what he says when he says that the lo hava gzera shava mufneh afilu mitzad echad. So then why doesn't he do it by Aaron? Like we said, Aaron also says Sham. So the Maharsha explains, Ve'en lemedim mimena de Sham, of Gabe Aaron, he itztorich legufe, dekai al hor hahar, tichtiv be'ahu inyana, ve'i lav hachi lo havi adinan demet behor hahar. So he says the Sham by Aaron, it says, Vayamol Aaron Sham I don't remember the exact pasuk, Sham behor hahar. So the Sham is not redundant. I need the Sham to teach me that Aaron died at hor hahar. If I didn't have the word Sham, I wouldn't know where he died. So the Sham teaches me, like the narrative, the psukim teach me, like there's nothing about the word that I can say, oh, that's extra, I can use it to derive this idea. V'chein gabe Miriam, dichtiv, v'yeshev am bekadesh, v'tamot sham, itztorich legufei, di lo aviktiv sham, lo aviyadinan demeta bekadesh. And he says here too, the first Sham I need it, v'tamot sham Miriam, to teach me, Miriam died there, at Kadesh. And then Vatikaver Sham, why do I need the second Sham? Samuch lemita kvura, right? So I need the first Sham to teach me where she died, the second one to teach me that women should not be taken into the street to be buried. And Aaron, I need the Sham to teach me where he was buried. So none of these Shams are available for the Gzera Shava yet. What? Okay. Dilo avektiv Sham, lo v'yedinan demeta b'kadesh. U'v'kadesh dikra l'shivat ha'amkai. V'sham batra itztorich nismach lemita gvura. That's what we just said, right? Aval sham de Moshe, but when Moshe dies sham, vayamot Moshe sham, mufnehu. It is a redundant sham. Dichtiv vayamot sham Moshe eved Hashem be'eretz Moav. De'inami de lo hava katav sham. Shapir hayal havayadinan de be'eretz Moav avayamot kan. I already know that Moshe is on the top of it said earlier, Hashem said to him, you're going to go up to the top of Har Nevo, you're going to see Eretz Moav, and you're going to die at the top of the mountain. And then it says Moshe died there. So I don't need the word Sham to teach me where he died. I already know where Moshe is. But by Miriam, if I didn't have the word Sham, the Maharsha is arguing, I wouldn't know where she died. So only the Sham of Moshe is extra. And so from the Maharsha, that's why he's answering all the questions in one blow. He's saying, that's why the Gemara learns it from Moshe and not from Aaron. So he says the Re'im is mistaken. And this also explains how I can understand Rabbi Elazar deriving both, one statement after the other, Sham to teach me the halacha of Samuch Lemita Gvura, and also this idea of that Miriam died by Bנשיקה, by saying the At Sham Shami Moshe means that the Sham by Moshe is extra, not the one by Miriam. Okay? The Iyun Yaakov gives I would say, simpler and perhaps more satisfying answer, depending on, how you look at it, where he says the At Sham Shami Moshe. So the Iyun Yaakov is at the bottom on the second line. Sham Shami Aaron. So he says, why doesn't it do it by Aaron? Right? We asked that question already. Dichtiv mikodem b'parshat Eila Maseh. It says that Aaron died al pi Hashem. So I am b'Maharsha. So he says, first look at what the Maharsha suggests. We just saw that. V'li nireh de b'Aaron gufa loktiv בפירוש במיתה על פי השם. תיש לומר דהכי כאמר, ויעלה אהרון הכהן אל הור ההר על פי השם. So the Yun Yaakov is a very sharp read. He's medakdek. He says, when it says al pi Hashem by Aaron, it says vayal Aaron HaKohen el hor hahar al pi Hashem vayamot sham. So he says the al pi Hashem could be that Aaron went up the mountain by the directive of Hashem. Not that he died al pi Hashem. The al pi Hashem isn't talking about the death. It's talking about him going up the mountain. Okay? Right? And he says, and maybe we don't want to assume, you can say Al Pi Hashem is referring both to before that he went up the mountain and after, which says that he died Al Pi Hashem. You just say that it's, like Pshat is that it's referring to him going up. It's a tzivui. Thank you. Right? Lechach yelfinan mi-Moshe. So that's his explanation for why the Gemara does it for Moshe and Aaron, right? Because by Moshe, dichtiv ken behedya, it says it explicitly, that vayamot sham al pi Hashem. So that's to me the Yun Yaakov is a bit more satisfying. That why the Gemara would learn it from Moshe and not from Aaron. Okay. I want to just finish because I know Colby has to go. I'll skip the next source. We'll do these last three in Shabbat. I want to offer like a slight chidush here at the end. The Gemara in Shabbat says the following. Okay. This story is kind of worth a shiur in of itself. It's a very strange story, and I cut it short. But we'll read it now together. You'll understand why it's interesting, I think, pretty shortly. Hanu kapulai dehavu kaple be'ara de Rav Nachman. So there were some diggers who were digging the land of Rav Nachman. I think they were working the land. They were preparing it for something. Okay. Nechar behu Rav Achai bar Oshaya. So there was a Rav Achai bar Oshaya was buried in the land, and they were digging and they accidentally bumped into him. Right? They uncovered his body. Ato amar le Rav Nachman nechar be'an gavra. So we were out, working your field, and we found a body. So Ata amar le mananin humar. So Rav Nachman went to the body and said, "Who are you?" So amar le ana Chai bar Oshaya. She said, "I'm Chai bar Oshaya. That's who I am." So amar le v'lav amar Rav Mari atide tzadike dahavu afra. So Rav Nachman said to him, but Rav Mari taught that even tzaddikim, when they die, they decompose and become dust. Their bodies don't stay intact and don't talk.
That is not bothered by. The talking is not bothered by. The decay is...
Right, the talking doesn't bother him.
Right.
Okay? So, if I were a corpse and someone said that to me, I would take offense, right? So he says... You're still here? What are you doing here? Right. So Umani Mari. So look at what he does. He talks smack. He says, Amarle Umani Mari Delaya Danale. He says, I don't know who's this Mari. It's like Paro, Mi Hashem, right? Like, well, who's this Mari? He's telling me I have to be dust. Like, go get out of here. I don't care. I'm a body. Leave me alone. So he said, Amarle. So he said back to him, so Rav Nachman doesn't give up. He says, no, there's another pasuk that tells me that you need to be dust. What are you doing being a body? So Amarle, akrayach kohelet, lo akrayach mishle. He says, you clearly have never really learned mishle properly, Rav Nachman. Dichtiv urakav atzamot kin'ah. What causes bones to rot? Jealousy. Kol mi sheyesh lo kin'ah belibo atzmotav markivin. Kol she'en lo kin'ah belibo en atzmotav markivin. The only bodies that decompose are the ones where the person had jealousy in his heart when he was alive. But people, true tzaddikim, who are not jealous, when they die, their bodies do not decompose. Okay? So Rav Nachman went to feel the body, to be like, is he alive? Am I dreaming? And he felt that there was substance to the body. He's like, no, this guy is really alive. Like, he's here. So Amar lekomar legavi lebetas, who says, what are you doing lying in the ground? Why don't you, get up, go home, have a coffee, enjoy yourself. So he says, Amar le galeta daitach tafil neveh lakaret. From the fact that you said that to me, you've revealed that you don't even know Nevi'im. Forget Mishle, forget Kohel. You don't even know Nevi'im. What? It's the roast of Rav Achai bar Oshaya. Or the roast by Rav Achai bar Oshaya. He says, Dichtiv vidatem ki ani Hashem bepitchiyat kivrotechem. Right? That the Tchiyat HaMeitim is only going to happen b'yemot HaMashiach. So it's true that I'm still able to speak and I have a body, but I'm not allowed to leave the grave. Okay? Amar lev haktiv ki afar atav v'lafar tashuv. So Rav Nachman, he goes back to his old ways, and he says there's another pasuk that says you're going to become a far again, right, by Adam Arishon. Amar lehu sha'ah achat kodem tchiyat hametim. So that means even the tzaddikim whose bodies remain intact, right before tchiyat hametim, their bodies will turn to dust so that they can get resurrected. Okay, so this is the Gemara in Shabbat. You would think it's the other way around, but it's not.
Meaning the body to be resurrected. He's saying no, we're going to turn to dust, and then our bodies are going to magically come back.
Makes sense.
How does that make sense?
Because you want to have the whole nest just for the Tchiat HaMetim. Not like you stayed the same the whole time and then you came alive again. No, you need to have the Tchiat HaMetim. Just as Tchiat HaMetim.
Okay. So why? Yeah. So why did I bring this story? Because Tosfot in our Gemara, he quotes it in the following way. And this is what Kobe, you asked earlier, okay? You said, what are you telling me now that you have 7 tzaddikim that whose bodies don't decompose? None of them is Yosef. Right. And none of them is Yosef. Temel Rashba, the kul tzaddikei nami. No tzaddik's body is supposed to decompose. Damer b'Shabbat, perashol v'rekev atzamot kina, mi sheyesh lo kina b'libo atzmotav nikavinu, she'en lo kina b'tayim. Any person who wasn't jealous in their life, okay, so their body shouldn't decompose. So you're telling me now 7 specific people's bodies didn't decompose.
So Binyamin was the only one of the brothers. Because Yosef read the whole story with his brothers. They were jealous of him. He was jealous of them. Just Binyamin was outside. It's like
Chidush.
Seemed like as a baby, but actually he was like 20-something years old.
Very good, very
But
good.
he was the only one who wasn't part of this.
Very good. Yeah.
He did it.
I was gonna say something a bit different, but that is very
But they
good.
ruined the shoe.
No, you didn't. You enriched it. Stop putting down your chidushim. They're amazing. That's good. That's very good. Why Binyamin specifically ties nicely with this. I like that a lot. V'yeshlo. So this is Tosfot's question, right? How are you telling me just 7 when everybody, who's a tzaddik should their body should retain? V'yeshlo mar de'achol liyot.
Yeah, I mean, if a Tana didn't decompose, you'd like to think that the Shiftei Kad didn't decompose. Right? In other words, from the Gemara on Shabbos,
Yeah.
right? It's a great story, but like if you see that, I don't want to put him down, but they weren't the Avot, right? They weren't the Shvatim, right? So how did he not decompose if the Shvatim
Right.
did?
Right. So that seems to be the question.
Right.
Yeah. Very good.
What's the answer for why only Binyamin?
I meant to look up this Rav Achai Bar Oshaya. I didn't get the chance to see where else he appears in the Chas.
Because Kobe's asking about Yosef, but they really could ask about. Right. I mean, we know that the Shvatim were,
That's what Tosfot's asking. All the tzaddikim should be right. What? Yeah, exactly. Very good. Yeah. Okay. V'yesh lomar. Tosfot answers. De'achol liyot. Okay. So Tosfot in classic Tosfot style, he comes and he's splits hairs and he's mechalek between the cases. Okay. Very good. Very good. De'achol liyot shelo yirkav v'yishlot bo rima. Now, I'll explain that in a second. But he says, our Gemara says, Lo shalat bahen rima v'tole'ah, that they won't have, there won't be rot and there won't be worms. And this Gemara in Shabbat, he says, people who have kina in their heart, don't have kina in their hearts, their bones won't rot. So what Tosfot argues is, all tzaddikim, their bones won't rot, but only those 7 people also didn't have
Rima.
Right, rima. Okay, so that's the chiluk that he makes.
So this guy was so better because he was still thinking.
He had worms, but his body didn't decompose. And Tosfot brings as a support. There's a story of Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon Sekinoi. We learned this last year in Bava Batra, that when he died, they put his body in the attic, and he was like giving a judgment in Beis Din, even though he was in the attic and he was dead. And at one point, there was a worm that came out of his ear. So that shows that Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon had a worm in his ear, but his body didn't decompose. So Tosfot uses that as a proof. Okay. The Marashal will skip just in the interest of time. But what I wanted to just say, kind of a question I have, which kind of ties to what Kobe was saying, but I don't think is as good of a chiddush as what Kobe was saying, is that Gemara Bava Batra that we learned last year about Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon. So when he dies, the worm comes out of his ear, and Tosfot uses it as to support his chiluk here. But as part of that story about Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, if you remember, there's a whole thing where he cuts out his innards and they don't decompose, even though it's the hot sun of Tammuz, and it's a whole story there. And part of that is it does a flashback for him when he's a student in the yeshiva with Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. They were like students together, and there's a story told there how Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, something happens, and the rabbis from the generation before them decide to like move his seat back. It was from a place of prominence, like further back. because his father didn't want him to get Gaivadik. So they move Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi's seat back. And then another rabbi says, why should Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi's seat get moved back and Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon's seat not get moved back? So they also moved back Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon's seat. And the Gemara says there that when Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon saw that, he got jealous. Right. He said, and after that he started sabotaging Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi and Shir. Every time Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi would give a chidush, so Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon would come and say, your chiddush is nonsense, you're just wasting our time. That he started, and it caused like a whole brogus in the yeshiva there. So we see from that Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon had, I would argue, had kin'ah belibo. Okay? At least in that story, because he was upset at Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. So if you're going to tell me that he had kin'ah belibo, how can you use Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, the fact that he had the worm in his ear when he died, to support Tosfot's chiluk, if he is not an example of someone, kol she'ein kin'ah belibo, ein atzmotav makivin. So that's a question I want to raise. And then what I want to suggest is that it could be that when he was a young yeshiva bacher, that he had brogus Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, but by the time he died, he had matured already and removed any kinah from his heart and been choser b'tshuvas. That when he died, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's son, Rabbi Elazar.
What do you think? Is Rabbi Yehuda's brother?
No, he was Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's son.
Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai.
Yeah, the one who was in the cave with him. The one that was in the cave with him. So by the end of his life, perhaps he had no jealousy in his heart. So that was kind of what?
Post cave, he worked out jealousy.
Post cave, right? So that was something I want to suggest. But I like Kobe. If I could say, I like your I really like your chiddush that.
Add me to Torah Sheli.
Yes, exactly. That perhaps this idea of that Tosfot brings, Kivin explains why it's Binyamin ben Yaakov specifically, and not any of the other brothers. That's a very good raya. Okay, shkoyach. If you want, if we ever get to Gemara and Shabbos, B'ezrat Hashem, we'll learn the rest of the story. There's much more to the story than.
Will it take us?
So but Kiddush doesn't explain why not Yosef.
He does. Yosef was jealous of his brothers.
He wasn't jealous.
His brothers were jealous.
His brothers were jealous of him.
I think it says Vayikach Moshe et atzmot Yosef Yemo. So you just have to say Yosef for whatever reason.
Shimon said it in the very beginning.
We reference Atzmot.
Remember that he was in the air.
As if it's the corpse. It seems to be a word to reference.
I mean the bones as opposed to the body.
Like it's, yeah.
So he decomposed. Why?
Don't we learn from the story of